Black people aren't that prominent in video games outside fighting and sports. Like, that's all we do. And while you can make the argument that most video games are about fighting in some capacity, most people would tell you that's a simplification. There's sandbox games, there's detective games, there's puzzle games. Puzzle games? How many black characters do you know in puzzle games? How many black characters do you know in video games? How many do you know? Because I don't know any of them. I don't know any black characters. I'm not saying I don't appreciate black people in violent video games. My favorite video games tend to be violent. I'm not mad. But I can only look at the same angry black guy with a robotic arm for so long, you know? Like, I don't know. I've seen this 4 times. Look at this guy, he's just beating up a cameraman. A game I grew up playing but I have a lot of fond memories with is San Andreas. A big reason is because I play it with my brother and sister. We had like designated roles. It was like somebody would be on cheat code duty, someone would have the map, someone would play. It was really cool. But what I always liked about San Andreas is that you got to do a bunch of cool stuff in it. Like, you know, every GTA game. But it's a black character doing this stuff. Like even the mini games where you're just working out, like you don't really get to see black characters doing this stuff. It's hold the gun, shoot. Something I often hear in relation to having black characters in video games is this idea that it's inserting politics into video games. Now I could bring up the various overtly political video games out there, but honestly, that's it's not even really that necessary. Politics is in everything. Even engaging in the discussion of whether or not black characters in video games are a minority cash grab is inherently political. Your apathy is a political perspective. It's such a fundamentally flawed argument and it screams internalized racism. I'm not even gonna say adding black characters isn't political, because it is, but it's the same way it's political for Spider-Man to keep bailing out the police for shit they can't handle. It's political to have Adam Hunter go rogue and start beating up police officers. It's political to have Sonic beat down military weapons in self-defense. It's political to... Be them minute or overt, politics has always been in video games. It's just been normalized so people don't notice it. So when people refer to the existence of black characters within video games as politics, it's more so telling that the existence of black characters within video games hasn't been normalized. Why?
I got an idea that I want to share. You don't like it, so what? I don't care. Throw your hands up, keep them in the air. Don't want to roll with it? Fuck up out of here. We only rockin' for the live ones right here. We only rockin' for the live ones right here.
An idea as to why this is partially lies where a lot of black issues do. Institutional racism. This point speaks more to a lack of black people within game development, but when that perspective is absent, it's only natural that there won't be a lot of black characters. Instead, what you get are miscellaneous side characters based on approximations of blackness, and that's what's so interesting about it. Despite being a medium that's inspired so much innovation and creativity, this boundary seems to be something that games can't seem to cross. Which is really ironic considering the sheer amount of elements video games borrow from extensions of black culture. Characters can be coded black, they can be influenced by the culture, sonically or aesthetically. There can even be black goons, but you know, what does that say about where we fit? Something that always stuck out to me back when I played WWE games was that whenever you wanted to create a new character, you'd automatically start off with white. Whiteness is default. I would always have to go out of my way to find the black skin, and sometimes it just ain't even there.
I don't have time for games. Get out of the way, pal. I don't have time for games. Get out of the way, pal. I don't have time for games.
Get out of the way, pal. I don't have time for games.
A lot of the time even, we're relegated to minimal customization options too. Black people only have fades, dreads, 80s afros, buns, high tops, and nothing else. Gendered clothing is bullshit too. I mean, it's just fabric. One of these games, I tried to give a female character a hat and it said, no, that's a man's hat. How the fuck do you gender a hat? But again, this links back to the institutional racism point. How can I expect there to be different variations of black hairstyles if you don't hire any black designers? Otherwise, all you're going to get is an approximation of blackness. Yeah, even like the stuff I've mentioned, you know, the afro. There's like a bunch of different ways to rock an afro. But how many variations of an afro do you see in a video game? That fat polygonal circle is all you're getting, Negro. Because while there has been an increase in black characters featured within video games, it's still not to the point where I'd consider it good. But let's talk about it anyway.
It 'twas cold at night when you came into my troublesome life, and it seemed as though everything's gonna be alright for the moment.
The first black video game character was on the Atari 800, playing basketball. Look, I can't even get that mad. Like, he did this in 1979. That was a racist time. If we're at like 89% racism right now, that shit was probably like 98. Shout out to him. This focus on sports and violence was a big part of how black people were depicted at the time. It was much less about creative depictions of black people and more about imitating real life people. Dennis Rodman got this treatment in Dead or Alive, but you know, he's chasing a white woman. He's doing these stupid kicks. Look at his outfit too. Gotta look like a fool. My first experience with black characters in any video game wasn't even black. It was like those alt skins where you'd get a vaguely dark skinned character. Like, if you want to know how bad things are, that was my representation. There's a lot of these breakdance ones for some reason. Like, you know those guys from Tekken Tag Tournament? They're kind of cool. Then you have Alina. Alina, she's okay. I don't like that her design concept was African women have long arms and legs, but even then she's still a dancer. I don't like Dudley. I don't care if he's British. He's a house nigga. Like, he's a whole servant. Why would I ever? Sean was cool, man. He had dreads. He's great in Second Impact. And then they.
I don't have time for games.
That nerf was real oppression. Is Steve back? I mean, well, even if he is Shantae black? Nah, my bad. I guess she's just half genie. yeah. I guess Jade from Mortal Kombat is definitely black. She's cool though. In fact, you know, speaking on black women, there's this really strong sexualization of them within video games for some reason, or at least dark-skinned women. I'm not saying it isn't an issue pertaining to the depiction of all women, but there's certainly a disproportionate amount of them. I'm just saying. Iris in Pokemon is funny to me because they made her like a dragon champion, and like that's the best and strongest type in the series. And then the next region comes and they said, we need to oppress this, and they created the fairy type just to fuck with people. 8 gens and a racist stereotype, but yeah, sure, BLM. There's a lot that are mixed too. Alex is Afro-Asian, and I think that's a really unique one. Plus, he's technically, depending on your perspective, he's a revolutionary, so you know, I'll take it. Clementine is interesting because she's pretty explicitly black. There's some debate surrounding whether or not she is. She got black parents, but niggas find one interview. It's just like, oh. Lincoln and Roxy, they're okay. I like Roxy's design a lot, but you know, I'm biased. Streets of Rage has had black characters for a minute. My personal favorite in recent years has been Cherry. Cherry is my favorite black video game character. She's cool, she's fast, she don't fuck with the police. Kind of. She has a fully coolie guitar. Honestly, this is the ideal. Fuck Adam though. Her dad is a whole cop. Do you know? You guys know Chung Lee is a cop. That shit fucked me up. I don't know, man. Skate's alright though. I like Skate. Marcus Holloway is cool as fuck. He has a cool backstory. He's a hacker. Like, it's something different. He feels like a real person in this crazy techno world. Like, I think, yeah, he's up there. There's some cool fighters, but that's just, you know, that's about it. You know, and I guess while black characters within video games are better than they once were, you know, what's frustrating me is that they feel so tokenized and incomplete. They're barely given prominent roles, and I do think that has a residual effect on the communities created. Back when I used to play PS3, I had this profile picture on PSN. It was the only black profile picture they had available. I took that shit with open arms. Look, when you have nothing, you'll take anything. Every time I went online, I would take names. Sometimes. And every time I did, what message do you think I got?
Nigga! Bitch! Ass! Nigga!
This wasn't like a one-time occurrence. This was very routine. They always have this fucking school shooter, Assassin's Creed profile picture too. It was so annoying. Gaming spaces aren't very racially accommodating. Now, part of this has to do with the fact that the internet inherently lacks accountability. But other spaces and forms of media have at least engaged in conversations surrounding race and its relation to the medium. Instead, blackness is politicized on a level that it even exists within video games to begin with, and is actively used for entertainment purposes outside that at the same time. Look at the sheer amount of black entertainers streaming video games and getting memed for their reactions. And you know, I'm not against it, but that's the only space black people are allowed to occupy, being laughed at. Even the culture, the jokes, like, do you guys remember I'm gonna say the N-word? White people love this joke. It's hilarious to them and all of its variations. But like, what's the punchline? Like, what's the kicker? Like, and then I'll see black people try to get into it and it's like, you know, this joke isn't for you. Like, do you really think a black guy sat in his room and started that joke? I don't know. There's so much stuff like this, and it makes it feel like you can only appeal to that audience if you play into this culture in some capacity. This is more regarding community, but it feeds into an overarching point. I've never truly felt entirely comfortable within a video game centric space, whether that's in real life or definitely online, because there's so much unchecked bigotry and slurs being thrown around that I'm like, well, I don't want to have to keep conforming to the political apathy of these spaces in order to do it. And that point really does go beyond race, that's just any marginalized group. I hate having to turn a blind eye to shit that actually frustrates me just so I can engage in a conversation about an obscure game that I like. You're dealing with a demographic that primarily hasn't engaged in any of this discussion. So now it's the industry's responsibility to make an attempt to normalize blackness. But for the most part, it hasn't. The influences are there, but institutional racism is rampant, and black video game developers don't get the same opportunities as others. This really does include Japanese companies. I don't care. Don't tweet BLM in June if you can't back it up. There's a subsection of people in Japan that's just Brazilian people. That's why Michiko and Hatchin takes place in fictional Brazil. There's black anime companies in Japan. There's black people that have literally moved to Japan just to learn about the process. There's a cavalcade of black artists, pixel artists, coders, illustrators. They're alive, they exist. Because while I'm not crazy about representation politics, more black people in the faces of their audience helps normalize what should be normal. And that's varied depictions of dark-skinned people. And I'd like to believe at some point, we'll get there. The video might make it seem like I don't appreciate the black characters we do have, and I do. I just want things to be better. You can't look at things for what they are, you have to look at things for what they could be. Streets of Rage 4, in my opinion, is probably the blackest video game I've ever played. It has unique character design concepts, unique goons, black boss fights, like it's a whole thing with a great art style and a lot of charm. One of my favorite games of all time. But how many games can I really say that for? I question how far the video game industry is really pushing itself if it's dragging its feet to overcome what should be fairly simple, creatively integrating black characters and customization. But if games like this one are anything to go by, even though things aren't exactly where they need to be, I don't think I'm entirely ready to give up.
How do you feel being controlled? Don't you wanna break free? How would you feel if there were no rules? What would you do? Tell me. I don't have no pride, I don't have no money, but I got these hands.